Hello, America. You are listening to the DMZ America podcast for Friday, October 11th, 2024. Coming to you from the left, I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I am editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis coming to you from the right. There was some famous radio guy who said, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all the ships at sea.
And we know who that was?
Nope. I'm sure it was back in the 30s, and 40s.
You sure
My
it wasn't
dad's.
Tokyo Rose?
No, it was a dude.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't nowadays. Tokyo Rose could be a guy.
Yeah, could.
Could be anyway. So we're doing something a little different today, which is because we're in a mad rush. I made the mistake of trying to go to a fast food restaurant in order to be fast, and it took longer than the local place. So lesson learned: stick to the local Palestinian joint. They don't think I'm Israeli, so everything's fine. So Scott doesn't know what I'm about to drop on him. He has no idea what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Talking about the love life of centipedes. We could be talking about the current exchange rate between the Zimbabwean dollar and the U.S. dollar. Anything, but I'm pretty sure Scott will be able to do this. And,
Thank you. Your faith is appreciated.
What
is that exchange rate?
Oh, it's got to be zillions to the US dollar, right? At least it used to be. It was a famously inflationary currency with like $1 billion denominations and stuff like that.
Before we get started, I just wanted to tease something too. We are going to have to, this is going to be a short one, but next week we're having a very special guest.
That's true.
All I'm going to say. It's very cool. And we're pretty excited about it. So listen.
Monday.
I have to pick it at 2.
Monday.
I think it's recording your time.
Ooh, American time. Okay. I believe it or not, I have a conflict, but I'm going to move the other thing away. Okay.
Well, let's double check that. Let me triple check that with the person's people.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Cool. The person has people.
Well, yeah, it's that kind of person, but it is a special guest, and people who are familiar with the show will not be shocked by this choice, but still, it'll be good. And I'm looking forward to speaking to this person.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So anyway, thanks for the reminder there. So Scott, let's talk about the hurricane as a news hook related to climate change is what I have in mind. So,
okay.
Obviously earlier this week, Hurricane Milton swept across Florida, the second major devastating hurricane to hit the United States in just over 2 weeks. Hurricane Helene hit the Big Bend part of Florida, but it was really in Western North Carolina that the effect has been really devastating. Asheville was hit really hard, lots of mudslides, lots of people killed, billions of dollars in property damage. And I'm sure they'll be finding bodies for many months to come in remote areas. There's still people who are having trouble getting food and water at this stage. And there's all sorts of controversies about whether FEMA could have done a better job or not. And then now we have Hurricane Milton that was meant to be a direct hit on Tampa St. Pete, but fortunately that didn't happen. But still, there was a major storm surge. At least 16 people have died. There's been major property damage there. Governor DeSantis says it's billions of dollars. I don't know where he gets this figure, like when it's literally been 12 hours since the hurricane hit. But the point is, obviously, you don't have to be a genius to see that it's very expensive. And the point here is these hurricanes, I mean, there's always been hurricanes in Florida, but the hurricanes are getting bigger. They're becoming more powerful. They're becoming more frequent. There's more named storms by the National Hurricane Center this year than ever before. These last 2 storms very rapidly spun up to Category 3, 4, and 5 due to the very hot waters in the Gulf of Mexico that feed them. They're going into places that didn't used to get hit by hurricanes, like Tampa St. Pete. Rarely really wasn't normally the kind of a place that had to worry a lot about hurricanes. So storms are getting bigger. Storm surges are getting bigger. There's less warning time because the hurricanes happen faster, spin up, not enough time to evacuate. Scott, this is climate change. This is human-caused climate change that is largely responsible for this development. And we're going to see more and more extreme weather around the country. We're going to see bigger blizzards, paradoxically, because they're a form of, those are basically winter cyclones. We're going to see more nor'easters, devastating nor'easters, here where I live in New York City and in other parts of New England, the New England, Northeast United States. Earthquakes will even get bigger because of climate change, because the more temperature changes you have, the more tectonic movement you have. You're going to get more wildfires. The point is, climate change is not something that we're in danger of. Climate change is happening now. Global warming is now. So I'm not going to hit you with, why are Republicans such assholes for politicizing climate change, because we're kind of beyond that. I mean, it's already happening. The question now is, what are the smart ways for the US to mitigate climate change that is already upon us? What kind of regulations, what kind of infrastructure can we rebuild? What kind of new ways of looking at the risk of lifting Kamala Harris's favorite word, holistically, can we look at this problem and deal with it intelligently? Just wishing it away is obviously not going to work. So, I have thoughts, but I was curious to hear if you did.
Well, yeah. First, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. So give me a moment.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm just dropping it on you. You haven't had any
Man-made.
chance to
I mean,
think about it.
I know that many scientists agree with that. I think that I think it may be a combination of a lot of different things, very much like the death of the dinosaurs. It was the comet that hit, that hit the planet. I go, well, that was one factor. They're discovering now that there's also highly increased volcano activity on the planet, which dampened and obviously blocked the sun, caused the plant life and photosynthesis not to work. So there weren't as many plants. And these dinosaurs, as you've seen from going to museums, were huge and needed many calories a day to survive. There wasn't as many calories for them to consume. I think this is one of those instances. Now, whether or not this is caused by humans, and I suspect we're contributing, given that we dump a crap ton of carbon into the atmosphere, and I happen to believe in science, and which I hate saying that. You don't believe in science. Science isn't a faith-based thing. It is science, hopefully, is, having a hypothesis, using many, many ways to determine if the hypothesis is correct, and using those results to say, yes, the hypothesis was correct, or the hypothesis was wrong. So I don't believe in science. I adhere to science. I think science is a thing. And it's worth listening to. My take on this for decades has always been, rather than follow the draconian, chicken littles of the climate change crowd, especially back, say, I mean, this stuff was going on. Don't forget, in the 70s, Ted, in the 70s, Sports Illustrated, as well as Newsweek, Time, National Geographic, all had covers that we were entering a new ice age that was caused by human beings. Well, that didn't happen. I think the danger of saying the sky is falling is if the sky doesn't fall. And in this instance, climate change is very gradual. It's not, I hated cartoons that it's snowing, therefore there's no global warming, which is absurd, which is of course absurd. That's not how global warming works. It's incremental, but the average temperature of the planet, the average temperature of the seas has gone up exponentially, and it doesn't take a hell of a lot to change that.
That's and also the thing about the snowstorm thing is, because the climate is so complicated, you can literally heating up the planet on average can actually cause certain parts of the planet to actually get colder.
Right. So it's a complex planet. Let's face it. We got one of the good ones in this solar system. Okay. Let's just be really upfront about this.
The only good one.
Yeah, really. Well, we're not so sure about what's going on underneath Europa. We're launching a probe to Europa, the moon of Jupiter, this month.
It's too far away from the sun, though.
Well, but it's very close to Jupiter, so the radiation from Jupiter it could heat it up. And there are clearly geysers on Europa, and they're saying that there's an under all that ice, there's like a 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 kilometers of ice, and then an undersea ocean. So we could just be like flipper people. Which is great because you can't really yell at each other. you can do that. I guess that them's fighting words in fish land. Anyway, long way to get to my point, Ted. I have been saying since college days that the best way to approach this issue is to approach it locally. And that is to say, what's the first lesson your mom ever told you? What's the first thing she ever told you to do? Clean up your mess. I don't think that's outrageous to expect human beings to clean up their mess. But, and I don't have it in front of me, Ted, I'll get you the link later. Did you see this report about, I think they're astroanthropologists or something. It's a really cool title. And they looked at human species and just species in general in an ecosystem. And when they enter an ecosystem and the resources are there for them to consume, they consume them all. Now, you could say like the Bonnie moth, I'm making that up, but the Bonnie moth goes to Ted's old house, the forest in his backyard, and eats everything. Well, then it can go on.
You don't have to make that up. That's that in where I used to live in the Hamptons, it was deer. Holy shit. If the deer got in, they would eat everything. And there were my lefty friends were like, you have to share with the animals. I'm like, no, I'd share. They're not sharing with me. They're literally eating every last thing.
Well, do they have anything to share, really? I mean, I guess they could. Well, they're meat, I guess, because they're delicious. But this paper's point was human beings are a species. We've entered into this environment, and in a quirk of this planet, we are a planetary species, obviously. But it's still an environment, a single environment. And true to the paper's hypotheses, we're gobbling up all the resources until there aren't any anymore, and we die. That's potentially where the direction we're headed. We're smart enough to change it. We're just not doing it. For me, here now, let's see, I live in Alabama. We have Alabama Power is a massive political power here in the state. The EPA has tried mightily to get them to clean up their power plants, which are run by coal. We mine coal here in Alabama, so they're going, well, why would we not burn coal? We have plenty of it. Well, we also have a high incident here in the Birmingham area of bronchitis, very high incidence of asthma and other lung disease because we have so much crap in the air. Clean that up. I'll never forget, I was working at the Birmingham News, and Alabama Power had a press conference crowing that they had gotten the scrubber technology up to 1988 standards. Ted, this was the year 2000 when they said this.
Well, yeah, that sounds like New York City public schools. Yay, all our kids, read at the 3rd grade level. Aren't 3/4 of them above 3rd grade?
Well, yeah. But, 3rd grade, woot.
Yeah.
They can read Hop on Pop. That's awesome. So how would I address this issue? That's how I would address this locally. I would address it saying, listen, it's hurting you.
But Scott, even if that worked, and I don't think it would, but let's just say it worked, right?
Okay.
And we went to 0 carbon emissions somehow. I mean, which would require a lot of radical changes in, in the way we, burn off fuel and all that stuff. And in terms of industrialization and all that. And it would have to be done on a global level. But even if we did that, there's so much heat now in the atmosphere that's not going to dissipate for hundreds and hundreds of years that we're going to be dealing with crop failures. We're going to be dealing with lost land. We're going to be dealing with, there are significant parts of the country that probably no one should live in. Like, for example, I'm looking at South Florida, built on an ancient coral reef. So, I mean, here in New York City, you can there's a proposal to build a Dutch style seawall that would be movable. So that whenever a big superstorm like Sandy type thing is coming in and you're expecting a surge, you just close the harbor, you close the gate takes the brunt of the surge, then you wait for the surge to run out, and then that's it. Great idea. Would cost like basically 1 week of supporting the Israelis in Gaza. But in Florida, there's not much you can do because the water's coming from underneath you. right? So you
It's
can't
coming from
really.
inside the land, it's from
It's
inside
coming
the
from
dirt.
it's coming from inside the lawn. Yeah. So I mean there's places like that. There's places like in the Hamptons where people, the Army Corps of Engineers is constantly spending hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to bolster the dunes and to protect the homes of super wealthy people from being washed away. I mean, there are places where nobody should be allowed to live anymore. There are places that certainly, at bare minimum, no new construction should be permitted
Yeah.
at all. And if your house is washed away in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, that house should not be able to be rebuilt,
Well,
period.
and also more to
And
your point, let's look at Phoenix, Arizona, where they're talking about the temperatures there going, and I lived there for a number of years and enjoyed it, by the way. Sonoran Desert is gorgeous. But they're talking about they had more 120-degree temperatures in the last 2 years than they've had in the last like 150 since they've been gauging this. They're predicting that the average temperatures in Phoenix will match those of what's happening to Dubai, where I was visiting some friends once, and the high was 136 degrees.
right,
Jumping into the Persian Gulf to go to try to cool down didn't.
does not work. Yeah, yeah, the
Does not
water's too
work.
hot.
But the other transition, go coal to gas to sustainable. I think that's
Nuclear is probably I mean, no one on the left would have said this during the
yeah.
no nukes movement of the 70s and 80s, but nuclear is looking really good nowadays. I mean,
It
it's
really is. Well, and the way the French do it is brilliant. They have little nuclear plants scattered throughout the country. They're not these big things that if there is an
just 2 feet
accident, should
high, very small.
are they really? No,
No,
they're at least 3 feet tall. No, but
it's
they are
like in Spinal Tap with Stonehenge.
Oh yeah. By comparison to like say 3 Mile Island or San
Sure.
Onofre or one of the other plants that we're aware that we know of, those things are massive. These are small and they're designed
So if something
to
goes
serve
wrong,
us.
it doesn't go that wrong.
Right. And that's probably, and we're close to, I suspect within our lifetimes, Ted, you and I will see a fission, which will be the most sustainable of the sustainables. It lasts forever. It burns it. You don't have to feed it. It's a remarkable hope for the future. We don't have it yet, but that's going to solve a lot of these issues. However, the points you mentioned, and you're absolutely right, the changes that we're experiencing now aren't going to stop. Let's say we stop carbon, spew all carbon-based energy
Tomorrow.
sources tomorrow. It's still going to be several
It's still going to
generations.
keep getting hotter.
Yes.
So the thing is, you've got like I mean, so it's like I think we're kind of like 50 years too late to really talk about like
Yeah.
changing energy, and you might as well at this point drive an SUV and do whatever the fuck you want, because it's not
I don't think so. There
at,
is hope
at
for
this
the
point. I
future.
don't think there's any hope for the next few generations, but there's so many implications here. You mentioned Phoenix. Really, should anyone be allowed to move to a giant multi-million person city where they already are having trouble getting enough water for it from the Colorado River
Not
system?
just the Colorado, but the Rio Salado as well, which is the Salt River, which tastes terrible. Quick story just to illustrate your point. Very brief. I lived in Fountain Hills. There was I think it was how do you say green in Spanish?
Verde.
Verde Valley, which was a 55 and older community about a mile away, and they were buying their water, truckloads of water from Scottsdale. Scottsdale in the last few months has told Verde Valley, we can't do this anymore. We're cutting you off. And I mean, it was like now there was no, and they had to go and find their
Yeah.
water elsewhere. They are dying of
No one
thirst
you should be
there.
allowed to live to. No one should be allowed to move to these desert areas like the Phoenix and Tucson metro areas. It's like if you're already there and you own property, fine. No one else, but you can't sell it, I gotta say, to a new arrival. It's like you can live in your house until you leave or die or whatever, but it's got to be abandoned then. I mean, that's
What
or
I mean,
sold to a local,
why?
because too many people live there. I mean, it's just there are
It
too
is.
many
It's what,
people
the
who
fifth
live there.
largest city in America now. I mean, it's competing with Houston and San Diego.
And LA. Yeah, no, it's too fucking big.
In the Colorado River, if I hiked rim
It's
to rim 2 years ago,
it's
and
in
part of
deep
that, of
shit.
course, oh, it's in very deep shit. It is much. I mean, they have a bridge you cross to go from the North Rim to the South Rim, and the reason it's so high is that when they built it, Ted, it was only about 5 feet above the water or 10 feet above the
Oh
water.
wow.
It is now 60 feet above the water.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, there's also like there's even geopolitical implications. I've been watching on Netflix the show The Terror about the people,
Oh, yeah.
the British expedition that was frozen into
Whoopsies.
north of Canada trying to find the Northwest Passage. Well, now we have the Northwest Passage is real because during the summer it's open. There's no ice on the polar ice cap is non-existent now during the summer, and it will be completely gone. There's nothing anyone can do about it. Well, that opens up possibilities, first of all, for it completely opens the possibility, for example, for Russia to send troops, to send ships over and into the North Atlantic in a way that they don't have that ability now. It also it opens up all sorts of possibilities for deep sea drilling, and there's a lot of oil underneath what used to be the polar ice cap. And the question is, who gets all that? Who does it belong to? Should it be exploited at all? Right?
The guys with the biggest armies usually win.
True.
I'm just saying.
But the point is that there's all these issues. I mean, about like where we should let people live. I mean, should we really let people move back to the mountains of North Carolina, given that what just happened? Should be. I mean, what about these people in California who live in the wildfire zones? Oh yeah, I rebuilt my house 3 years ago, and the new one got burned down too. I mean, well, and then if they do that, should we make them whole? Who should we help financially as taxpayers? Anyone? No one?
Listen, if I'm going to build you mentioned the Outer Banks. If I'm going to build in the Outer Banks, then I get what's coming to me, because the Outer Banks do get hit by hurricanes on a fairly regular basis. Mm-hmm. I know this. Everyone around me knows this. The insurance companies are telling them to go fuck themselves, and I don't blame them, because they know that what's going to happen. And regardless of the frequency of the storms or how strong they're, this has been true since North Carolina was, part of, the supercontinent. I mean, this is just how it's been, how it is, and where it's positioned. Pangea.
Well, I mean,
and don't forget, you were right. You mentioned earthquakes in the last month. Earthquake activity in California has ticked up significantly. So maybe, just maybe, that'll open up the several, 100-mile wide magma lake that is under Yellowstone, which is due to explode, will eject so much shit into the air that it's an extinction level event. That'll take care of the problem. Yep, problem solved.
That'll be, I mean, because we have met the problem, and it is us, to quote Walter.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that. Listen, I mean, I think that there are ways. I don't deny people the right to move and live where they want to, but also let them know you're not going to have water.
This is on you.
Living in a desert, sans water, is really bad.
I had to do community service in the Hamptons for a speeding ticket, and I worked in the zoning board office, and in that office there was an entire file section for just one street in East Hampton. It was called Girard Drive, and it's basically a spit of land that juts out into what they call the bay there on the bay side. Well, every time there's a storm, every time there's a nor'easter, it's separated from the land and the bridge is gone. So they have to go in. I mean, the point is, probably 40% of the budget of East Hampton is Girard Drive.
Really?
And there's probably 20 houses there. They're not even super rich people. This is not celebrities, but it's, these are $2 million homes. It's like, I looked at that and I'm thinking, the obvious solution here for budgetary discipline is to tell people, if you want to live on Girard Drive and you guys want to all go in on bridge reconstruction yourselves, have at it, but we're not paying for you anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And the point is, I guess I have sympathy. I feel like if you have a beach house, North Carolina, Outer Banks, probably it's a second home and it gets washed away. that's on you and maybe on your insurance company if they're stupid enough to have underwritten you. But like, let's say you're in North Carolina and it's just your house and it's in a holler somewhere, and you know it's a once in a century hurricane like washes it away, right? I mean, you weren't really being a dumbass. You just like it, you
Right.
just lived where you lived. Well, on the other hand, you were a homeowner as opposed to a renter, which makes you richer than the average American. So, should people who, like me, who are renting their homes, have to subsidize those people? I mean, these are tough questions, and I can
No,
argue them either way. I mean, I don't, I think, I mean, I do think it's generally in society's interest, especially when people are working class or middle class, to bail them out, because if you don't, they plunge into poverty and they end up, you know, basically going on welfare and becoming dysfunctional. Whereas if you save them, when these things happen from time to time, they continue to, you know, contribute taxes and so on. It's better for society if you save them. So, but I think it can get tough. Like, where's the cutoff? You know, it's like, should someone with a $5 million home have their, you know, be
Mm.
bailed out? How about a two? I mean, how about a one? I mean, it just really, it's hard to say,
Well,
but
let
we're
me
not
pose.
having these discussions at all. I'm not hearing these discussions come out of either major political party, and I'm not hearing the media engage with them in any kind of meaningful way.
Well, let me pose this question to you, Ted, because I mean, because I'm, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? A dork. I subscribe to the Daily Breeze, which was the newspaper where I started my career in Southern California a million years ago. It services the South Bay of Los Angeles. Um, and part of the South Bay of Los Angeles is Palos Verdes, which is by one of the toniest neighborhoods, not just in California, but in America,
Yeah, that's where
the
Paul
richest country on
Conrad
the world.
lived.
There's a place, part of Palos Verdes Estates called Portuguese Bend, is falling into the ocean. Now, if you look at where these homes were, they're about half a mile, maybe a little bit more, but they're still on the coast. The homeowners, are demanding that taxpayers help bail them out and help make them whole, as you said, as you put it. Um, these are remarkably wealthy people.
Mhm.
B, they were on the coast of California. Now, Ted and I are of a certain age. There are songs and jokes about California sliding into the ocean.
The entire
None
plot
of
of Superman.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah, they were going to set off the. Oh, you're right. I forgot about it. Lex Luthor was going to blow up the San Andreas Fault and have all that. My point is, they knew the risks. They took the risks. They live in their 5, 6, 8, $10 million homes. Should you, me, and the taxpayers of California make them whole? My
I personally say no.
Well, they've decided that the state has decided to tap into its emergency relief fund and give each of those homeowners $10,000.
Okay.
For
That works.
what? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. First of all, what is
It's a tip.
$10,000? Yeah, I mean, seriously, what are they going to spend it on? They're going to buy new, 10 pairs of slacks. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it makes me angry, which, because you and I differ on class distinctions, but also we agree in weird ways on this very issue. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about, should the middle class, the real middle class, and should the lower middle class, who actually pay a pretty significant amount of the taxes, have to pay the bill and give these assholes a $10,000 check because they were stupid enough to build their houses in a dangerous place? I mean, if they built it on the side of a volcano, I mean, would you be okay with that? I mean, the view would be
No,
spectacular.
that's an excellent point. No,
Yeah,
that's a great way to put it, Scott. Thank you for that. It's very elucidating. It's illuminating, and it could even be explosive. I don't think that there's no. I think there's no question. Most Americans do not favor bailing out rich people and prosperous people. But I
but
mean,
we do look at the 2018
2008.
2008 housing market. We didn't
Yeah,
bail
we
out
sure
the
did.
poor schmucks who got suckered into bad loans.
Or the
We gave
people
them money.
who lost their homes to foreclosure, who had never missed a payment or been late once. The banks just lied and fucking stole their houses. It happened to thousands of people.
And yet the big checks, the bailout, too big to fail checks went to
Those
bonuses for the
assholes.
executives.
Yep.
Um, and
Well,
with
you
the
know how I
only,
felt about that,
well,
but
I did too. I think most Americans felt, what's fair, what's not, what's right, what's wrong. And that was just, I mean, to give someone a check
what I'm
without,
really I would like to say is going, there's probably no better way to send the message also that, we're not going to bail you out than to issue an edict. No one can ever build a new house out in those places. So,
yeah, no,
and
I
you
think
can,
that's,
that's
yeah.
it. You
But
can maintain your old one until it gets washed away, but
But the
that's it.
problem is, Ted, as you know, and as I know, and I'm about to say, is that the moneyed interests skew government to their own benefit. And
Always.
that's where government is evil. And that's why one of the main reasons I don't care for it, because it's always been bent to the advantage of those who can afford to bend it. And this is one of those instances. I mean, the city of Palos Verdes, Rancho Palos Verdes is about the size of your living room. I mean, it's not a big community. It doesn't have a great tax base, but they get taxed, they get property taxes, I'm sure there's some businesses there where they can make some money, but for the most part, not a lot of money because their job really is to make the rich people happy,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, it's
clean the streets,
residential.
make sure the garbage is picked up. Yeah, it's a bedroom community for, I'm not sure where, for what, maybe Paris. I can't imagine where they work. But it's, by the way, one of the great liberal cartoonists, one of the great liberal lions of the 20th century, Paul Conrad, lived there. I just want
I,
to throw that out
I went
there.
to his home there
Oh, you're right. You were there. I was there
where
and
he told
was
me
t
that amazing story.
yeah, where he told me that I shouldn't be a cartoonist, and got me drunk as a
Well, he was
19-year-old.
probably right about that. I wish I'd listened to that advice myself sometimes.
Yeah, it's a question. Have you asked any other cartoonists this question? I know this is way off what we're talking about, and we'll get back to it in a second.
On the
But if
DMZ America podcast, we're always focused like a laser on our topics. We never go
but
off track.
my wife asked me this, and I've asked of a number of cartoonists, and I've asked you, and no, I don't. You know what? I don't believe I have. But if you knew then
Mm,
what you know now,
yes.
besides investing heavily in Apple and and in Google and in
Right.
Facebook, would you have followed? Would you have gone into this profession? And
No.
I'll give you a sneak peek. I've asked two or three other cartoonists this. Every single one of them said yes, I would.
Well, okay, I would not. Because
Really?
no, I mean, look, I love it. I have loved it, but there's something incredibly depressing about being part of something that's declining constantly. Sort of like living in the United States, being born in 1963, and you just know that the best days are behind you. You're never going to see better days. I'm sure the U.S. and cartooning will turn around, but I'll be gone. I won't be here to see it. And so it's a bummer. I mean, I could have done other things. If I knew what was coming, I think I would have, I would have probably worked hard to form some sort of online media model that was sustainable going forward, because there's a tremendous need and a market for news and commentary and analysis that is going unfilled or unfulfilled. But no, I mean, look, I mean, Scott, you got a nice ride. You worked at newspapers. You got that buzz of the newsroom at 6 different places.
Yeah.
I never once worked a single day of my career in a newsroom. I, you know, I was never. You got to go. You went to an AAEC at the White House, didn't you? 1 year, or was that
I
before your
wasn't
time?
there, but we were. Yeah, this was back in the day. We were invited by presidents. You look at our year, someone put together a 50th anniversary commemorative book. I mean, we were there at the White House with John Kennedy. Richard Nixon came and spoke to us. Hubert Humphrey, LBJ loved us. He canceled a lunch with the prime minister of something to stay and have lunch with the cartoonists back in the 60s while he was president.
Wow.
Jerry Ford, except, we used to do drawings the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists would do caricatures of an incoming president and present it to them. Jerry Ford accepted. Jimmy Carter did not. interestingly enough. And that's kind of really when you can look at the decline. Reagan loved us. He didn't like our politics, but he loved cartooning and appreciated it. HW did. Clinton, there are a number of
He hated
cartoonists
me personally,
who did.
Clinton,
How come? Why, Ted? There's
because
so much to
I was
love.
mean to him. I attacked
Oh,
him
okay.
from the left, and man, Democrats do not like that.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Well, we better tie this up in a neat little bow. Apparently,
All
we're
right.
not going to clean up. We should. Okay. Final thing is that, yeah, if you showed me legislation that was not as overarching or draconian, when you say things like, we're going to get rid of the internal combustion engine, that scares the shit out of a lot of people because they drive things that are running on internal combustion engines. But if you can say even when they put long, like 30 years to that, people still freak the fuck out because they don't trust the
Oh,
government.
yeah, and they're not wrong. I mean, like for example, I still don't really buy in on the new light bulbs. I miss the incandescent light bulbs,
Oh, I do too. Well, first of all, the curly Q ones would just look stupid.
but the light sucks. That's
It
what I
does.
care
It's
about.
gotten considerably better. And frankly, we've replaced the light bulbs in our house, and it does make your energy
It
costs go
lasts
down.
forever. Yeah.
And that's the best part. And that's the part and that's how you sell things. It saves you money. It's going
Right.
to be better for you.
It's
Now, how do you
crappier, but it saves you money.
well, they're not crappy anymore. That's the thing. They're actually pretty bright. They're dimmable now. You can, and now most of them, you actually have the capacity. You can make them like red or
Well, a lot of
orange
this
or,
is like the way Apple handles its customers, right? Like they are just like, no more floppy disks. What? It's like, oh, no more USB port. Sorry, whatever. And it's like everyone, if people freak out, and then they get used to it.
yeah. Well, and that's where we're going to have to go. But you're absolutely right in terms of, in dangerous areas and overcrowded areas, places like Phoenix, and Phoenix wants to be a top 3 city and could be, but then they're all going to be really, really thirsty. Um,
Yeah. Well, I think honestly, there need to be population controls imposed in the most extreme climate zones that
Now,
clearly.
how does that look? What does that look like?
I mean, it's going to look a little Soviet. I mean, I think you're just going to be like, you can't move to a place like this unless, let's say, you get a dispensation because like your relative lives there. Like your aging parents live in Phoenix, and you need to move there to take care of them. You have to apply to like a government agency to get permission to move into the restricted zone of Phoenix. But like, you should not, if you leave Phoenix to like go to college and your parents no longer live there, it's like Tom Wolfe. You can never go home again. Like,
Well, in
people need to
Arizona,
leave. I mean, it's attrition. Let the population move out and die out. I mean, people shouldn't live there.
do you know what the population of Phoenix was roughly before the outbreak of World War II?
100,000.
48,000.
That seems like
And
about right.
during the summer, it went down to like 12,000.
Well, I mean, look, honestly, the best comparison to the future of Phoenix is the former Soviet Republic of Turkmenistan, where a river does not run through it. They have a population of just, I think, 2 million, and it's a massive country. Nobody lives there because it's 145 fucking degrees. So people can't live there. It's like, that's just how it is. It's reality.
And this is the beginning of the mole people.
Well, you could do that. That's true.
I'm just saying.
All right, Scott, where can we see? I know you've got to run. Where
Yeah,
can
I'm
we find
sorry.
all things Scott Stantis related as we prepare for our glorious celebration of Indigenous Genocide Day this coming Monday?
Jesus Christ. Being married to an Italian, it's Columbus Day, just so everyone knows. And you can see my work at gocomics.com/Scott Stantis, or you can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City. You can go to the Chicago Tribune opinion site and see the work I do for them. And you can go to the Dallas Morning News site and see the work for them. And you can go to smirkonish.com. If the name sounds familiar, he hosts a show on CNN on Saturday, and he's also daily on Sirius XM. And you can hear my lilting voice on Center Clip, which is sort of mini podcast, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. Ted is also a frequent contributor to and does great stuff, which pisses me off, which is of course the point. Centerclip.com. Get the app. You'll be glad you did. Ted, where can we see things all Rallian?
Go to Rall.com, go to whowhatwhy.org on Saturdays, particularly. Go to X Spaces and Rumble. You can watch the Final Countdown radio show, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern time, Monday through Friday, also streamable after the fact. And go to cocomics.com/Ted Rall. And that's all. Scott, thank you again. Yeah. And I hope you make your appointment on time.
Oh, I'm fine. They're just editors. They just want things.
Oh, those guys.